We are back on Country Pocket with Jaimee Harris. The new album is Boomerang Town, and the song you just heard is called "How Could You Be Gone." There's also another song on the record from the perspective of a parent who lost their child. How does grief affect you?
In ways that are constantly shocking to me. I I've lost a lot of people in my life at a young age, but there's one particular loss in my life that I think about every day, and that's the loss of my mentor, Jimmy LaFave. And some days I can think about Jimmy and I can talk about Jimmy and I can hear him sing and I can laugh. And other days, someone will barely mention his name and I'll start bursting out crying. And he passed away in 2017. So for a song like, How Could You Be Gone? I started that with Mary Gauthier, my partner. We had just been to an outdoor funeral for a friend of ours who passed away shockingly. She was the healthiest person we both knew and was an avid hiker and got bit by a tick on the trail where she hiked every day for 40 years and had a violent reaction and passed away in 4 days. And as Mary and I were discussing, or I guess evaluating that concept, I kept asking her questions. And then I also shared the experience that I still feel about the loss of Jimmy. And there's several days when I want to call him and like tell him that he died, or like when David only passed away. I want to call him like, hey man, like, did you hear David passed away? It's so weird. There are all these moments I physically pick up my phone to call him. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, how could he be dead? How could he be gone? And so that's how we got to that concept. And I think, another song that deals with grief is Love Is Gonna Come Again. And that song started out as a really bad song because I was giving advice that I had first of all, I had no right to give. And also, I feel like giving advice in a song just usually sucks. As a rebellious person, when someone tries to give me advice, the first thing I want to do is like tell them like F you and no thanks. Like I'm going to do the opposite of what you're telling me to do, even if it's good for me. It's like a total addict mentality. So I was able to, with the help of my friend Graham Weber, figure out like, well, what would you want someone to tell you, in your grief? And the answer to that was, I just want someone to acknowledge that I'm in pain and then it's going to take as long as it's going to take. And so sometimes a lot of times I need to take my own advice, quote advice. I mean, wrong word, but in these songs, these concepts of, just hang in there and it's going to hit you. And that's okay, because to love deeply means you're going to grieve deeply when those people aren't physically in your life anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah. So you wrote that one with Mary. Tell me about her. I mean, I'm sure listeners of a folk music show know about her, but from your somewhat different perspective than the rest of us.
It's really funny that you say that because I remember where I was when I first heard about Mary Gauthier, and I was in my bathroom cleaning it when I was living in Austin in like 2015. And I heard this Ray Wiley Hubbard song called Name Droppin', where he drops the names of like Scrappy Judd Newcomb, Darcy DeVille, John D. Graham. And the only person I didn't know in the song was he sings like Mary Gauthier, Mary Gauthier. And I was like, oh, so I had to Google her. I didn't know who she was. And we eventually met at a songwriting workshop that I took that was hosted by Gretchen Peters and Eliza Gilkison and Mary Gauthier. And so that's how I got to know her. And shockingly to both of us, about a year and a half later, we ended up together as a couple. And it has been extraordinary. First of all, one thing that I'm not sure the general public gets to see, because I think there's this perception that, Mary Gauthier is so serious and writes all these serious songs, is she's one of the funniest people I have ever met in my life. She does incredible impersonations. She wakes up bubbly and happy in the morning. Like, she's truly hilarious. And I wish that, more people got to see that side. I think people got to see it a little bit. And I made a music video called Missing Someone. And she wears these like pink swim shorts that have rubber duckies all over them. And her hair is all crazy. And she sings it to a hairbrush. And I'm like, yeah, that's like the Mary Gauthier I get to see all the time. And it's been extraordinary. Like, first of all, both of us being in a relationship, this is the longest any of us have been either one of us have been in a relationship. We've been together about 5 years. And there's so much work that we've done personally in recovery and therapy, but there's all this work that we discovered both of us really need to do that we can only do if we're in a relationship. And it's been really beautiful. I mean, if you had told me years ago that I would end up with a musician, I would say no. If you said songwriter, I would say absolutely not. There's no way. And if you told me that I was going to spend almost every day with that person, I would have told you you were out of your mind. I had this idea that I was going to live next door to whoever I ended up with, that I needed more space than that. And it turns out it's like wonderful traveling the world with her. And it's been fun for her, I think, because there's so much of the world I haven't seen. And so she's seeing it through my eyes, and which is rejuvenating her love of being on the road and being excited about music and turning on the curiosity. So we really, really help each other in ways that where I'm strong, she's weak, and vice versa. It's been extraordinary. And she's taught me so much about the art of being a troubadour. When I lived in Austin, I played frequently with a 10-piece band. And then I finally quit my job after all the years of waiting. And I went on the road as a solo opening act. And I realized I suck at this. Like, this is not me. Being alone on stage with an acoustic guitar is terrifying. Like, the reason I write songs is because I have a difficult time articulating what I mean in my spoken words. And so talking in between songs is my worst nightmare. And I had a breakdown. And she slowly guided me and helped me learn how to be a troubadour. And it's an extraordinary opportunity to learn from, in my opinion, one of the best troubadours that's ever walked the earth.
That is quite cool. You certainly found a hell of a songwriter. um, so how is it that you, I guess, shift perspectives so much in your songs, where you're a friend, you're someone you read in the newspaper, you're you really inhabit other people in your songs?
Well, that's been a process. I mean, one of my favorite songwriters of all time is a songwriter named James McMurtry. And I spent about every Tuesday and Wednesday night that I possibly could hanging out at the Continental Club, watching him do his thing live, and just been totally amazed by his ability to craft songs in the way that he does, where so many of them are short stories told from the perspective of, sometimes women, and just these incredible characters. And I think a couple things that had happened for me. One is that the concept of being a writer in the same way that a novelist is a writer hadn't really internalized in me yet. The idea that, if you pick up a Barbara Kingsolver book, people aren't thinking like, oh, this 11-year-old boy is Barbara Kingsolver. They're thinking, here's a story I'm going to be told. But with the songwriter, particularly like a singer-songwriter, we think that Johnny Cash shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. We don't, for some reason, extend that idea of this person's a writer. But it's not so much a conscious decision as, for me, every song, every blank page is a new puzzle. And I just let my gut guide me to try to figure out the best way to tell that story and who's going to be the best person to tell that story. Like in the example of Boomerang Town, I tried to tell it from my point of view. That didn't work. I tried to tell it from the perspective of a waitress at a coffee shop in Crawford. That didn't work. I tried to tell it from the perspective of a veteran that's just returned from the Mideast War. The best way I found to tell that story, which is so linked to my experience and the experience of my family, is through the eyes of a 17-year-old boy that's knocked up his girlfriend and works at Walmart. I have no idea how that works. It just feels like there's somebody here that needs to tell their story, and it's coming through me. And that might sound a little like woo-woo or kumbaya, but I just go, okay, there's a 17-year-old boy that needs to be talking now, so we're going to make sure that he gets his story told. But I think most of it is like, it's not I'm writing this record and every song is going to be written from a different perspective. It's just, to me, honoring the call of writing the best song that I possibly can, or I guess best isn't really the right word, the truest song I possibly can. And a lot of that, the truth of that has to come from who's speaking, who's the narrator, who's talking, and who are they talking to. And the way that I let this record and also Red Rescue come about, which is why I think I'm going to be an artist that it's going to be a while before you get a next record from me. I'm kind of a slow writer in this way, is I just write and write and write until a theme begins to emerge. And then I see how what I've been writing fits together.
Yeah. I like to close my interviews by having the guest pick a song. only rule is it cannot be one that they were involved in creating. So I'm going to give you a little prompt. Why don't you pick one that shows? I know you said, everyone thinks Mary's so serious. Why don't you pick one of her songs that you think shows more of her true personality?
What? Oh my gosh, that is a tall order. Um, mm, I think probably one of the closest. I have got two in my mind, and they're both from her new record. Um, I would say "Thank God for You." I feel like that one, it's not quite as lighthearted. There's a new song that she has that isn't out yet called Best Western. And to me, that is like I said, it's not out yet, but that's like where Mary is right now, where she's really stepped into a lot of what she's learned from John Prine. But I think Thank God for You I'm gonna have to choose that one.
Jaimee Harris, thanks so much for coming on. Just touring the East Coast right now, and we've got Boomerang Town, a great new album. Check it out, or at least the songs that I haven't played. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great talking to you.